The Zephyrians were a strange sight in the vast darkness of space. Their small fleet of ships, barely holding together, drifted aimlessly through the stars. These beings, with their frail bodies and large, sad eyes, had once called a beautiful planet home. But that was before they were cast out, labeled as weak and useless by the powerful races that ruled the galaxy. On their home planet, Zephyr, life had been peaceful. The Zephyrians spent their days studying the mysteries of the universe and creating beautiful works of art. Their bodies were slender and delicate, with skin that seemed to glow softly in the light of their twin suns. They had no natural defenses, no claws or sharp teeth. Instead, their greatest strength lay in their incredible minds and their ability to feel deep empathy for all living things. But in a galaxy where might made right, the Zephyrians were seen as easy targets. Stronger alien races would often raid their planet, stealing their resources and destroying their cities. The Zephyrians, with their peaceful nature, could do little to stop them. One day, a group of galactic leaders met to discuss the fate of the galaxy. They saw the Zephyrians as a burden, a weak link in the chain of advanced civilizations. With cold hearts, they decided that Zephyr and its people had no place in their vision of a strong, united galaxy. The news hit the Zephyrians like a thunderbolt. They were given one planetary cycle to leave their home or face total destruction. Panic spread across Zephyr as the people tried to understand why they were being punished for their peaceful ways. Jackson, a young Zephyrian scientist, watched with tears in his eyes as his people scrambled to gather what they could. "How can they do this to us?" he asked his elder, Zora. "We've never harmed anyone." Zora, her luminous skin dimmed with sorrow, placed a gentle hand on Jackson's shoulder. "The galaxy fears what it doesn't understand, my child. Our strength lies not in our bodies, but in our hearts and minds. Someday they will see that." As the deadline approached, the Zephyrians loaded their ancient ships with as many of their people as they could. Those left behind faced an uncertain fate. The ships, not built for long-term space travel, groaned under the weight of so many refugees. As Zephyr grew smaller in their view screens, many Zephyrians wept. They were leaving behind everything they had ever known, forced into exile by those who saw their compassion as weakness. For months, the Zephyrian fleet wandered through space. They were turned away from every inhabited planet they approached. Their supplies ran low, and hope began to fade. Some ships broke down and had to be abandoned, their passengers crammed into the remaining vessels. Jackson, now working tirelessly to keep the life support systems running, often found himself staring out into the endless void of space. "There has to be someone out there who will understand us," he would whisper to himself. Little did Jackson know, fate was about to take an unexpected turn. In a distant part of the galaxy, a curious and compassionate race was about to embark on their first deep space mission. These beings, known as humans, would soon cross paths with the Zephyrians and change the course of galactic history. As their ships drifted, running on the last reserves of fuel, the Zephyrians held on to a slim hope. They told stories of their beautiful lost home to their children, sang songs of peace in the cramped ship quarters, and dreamed of a day when they would find a place where they could live without fear. They had no way of knowing that their salvation was drawing near, in the form of a species that many in the galaxy considered primitive and unpredictable. The humans were coming, and with them, a chance for the Zephyrians to find not just safety, but true acceptance. As Jackson looked out at the stars one more time before turning in for the night, a small, unfamiliar ship appeared in the distance. The encounter that would change everything was about to begin. The human spaceship Explorer 1 cruised through the vast emptiness of space. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the star map in front of her. This was humanity's first deep space mission, and the excitement among the crew was palpable. "Captain, we're picking up some strange readings," announced Lewis, the ship's sensor operator. His brow furrowed as he studied the screen. Sarah moved to his station. "What kind of readings?" "It looks like a fleet of ships, but they're like nothing I've ever seen before, Louis replied. As the Explorer 1 drew closer, the crew gasped at the sight before them. A cluster of battered ships drifted slowly through space. They looked ancient and barely functional. "Are they aliens?" whispered Emma, the young communications officer. Sarah squared her shoulders. "Let's find out." Emma tried to establish contact. For several tense minutes, Emma worked at her console, sending out greeting messages in various formats. Suddenly, her screen lit up. "Captain, we're receiving a response." A face appeared on the main view screen, and the humans fell silent in awe. The being looking back at them had large, expressive eyes and softly glowing skin. It looked fragile yet intelligent. "Greetings," the alien said in a melodious voice. "I am Jackson of the Zephyrians. We mean you no harm." Sarah stepped forward. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth ship Explorer 1. We're on a peaceful mission of exploration." Jackson's eyes widened. You're not afraid of us." Sarah looked confused. "Why would we be afraid?" Over the next hour, Jackson told the humans the sad story of the Zephyrians. The crew of Explorer 1 listened in shock and growing anger at the injustice done to these peaceful beings. "We can't just leave them here," Sarah said to her second-in-command, Michael. Michael nodded. "But our ship isn't big enough to help all of them." Sarah thought for a moment, then turned back to the screen. "Jackson, we want to help you. We can't take all of your people, but we can escort you to our home planet, Earth. Our leaders will want to meet you." Jackson's face lit up with hope for the first time in months. "You would do that for us, even though we're strangers. Where we come from, helping those in need is considered a strength, not a weakness," Sarah replied with a smile. As the Explorer 1 began to lead the Zephyrian fleet towards Earth, Sarah sent a message back to Mission Control explaining the situation. The response came quickly. "Proceed with caution. Bring aliens to lunar base for quarantine and diplomatic talks." The journey to Earth took several weeks. During this time, the humans and Zephyrians learned more about each other. The humans were amazed by the Zephyrians' advanced scientific knowledge and artistic abilities. In turn, the Zephyrians were impressed by the humans' adaptability and determination. Jackson spent much time on the Explorer 1, exchanging ideas with the human scientists. He was fascinated by their technology, which was different from anything he had seen before. "Your species is so young," he said to Sarah one day, "yet you've accomplished so much." Sarah smiled. "We have a saying on Earth, necessity is the mother of invention. We've had to overcome many challenges to get where we are." As they neared the solar system, both humans and Zephyrians felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. How would this first contact between Earth and an alien species go? The lunar base came into view, a sprawling complex of domes and antenna arrays. A fleet of smaller Earth ships approached to escort them in. "This is it," Sarah said to Jackson, who stood nervously beside her on the bridge. "Ready to make history." Jackson took a deep breath. Ready or not, a new chapter begins for both our peoples. As they began docking procedures, everyone knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The Zephyrians had found potential allies, and humanity was about to step onto the galactic stage. The real challenges were just beginning. The lunar base buzzed with activity as humans and Zephyrians stepped onto its metal floors. The base, usually quiet, now echoed with excited voices and the soft hum of Zephyrian bodies. Jackson, along with a small group of Zephyrian leaders, followed Captain Sarah Chen down a long corridor. Their large eyes darted around, taking in every detail of this strange new place. At the end of the corridor stood a group of important-looking humans. One man stepped forward, his face a mix of wonder and caution. "Welcome to Luna Base," he said. "I'm Director Thomas Williams of the Earth Space Agency." Jackson bowed slightly. "Thank you, Director. We are grateful for your hospitality." For the next few hours, humans and Zephyrians sat in a large meeting room, discussing their situation. The humans were amazed by the Zephyrians' story and appalled at how they had been treated. "Earth will not turn its back on you," Director Williams declared. "We'll provide temporary shelter while we figure out a long-term solution." Relief washed over the Zephyrians' faces. For the first time in months, they felt safe. Meanwhile, news of the aliens' arrival spread across Earth like wildfire. In cities and towns, people gathered around screens, eager for any information about these mysterious visitors. On a popular news show, the host turned to her guest, Dr. Maria Lopez, an expert in xenobiology. "Dr. Lopez, what can you tell us about these Zephyrians?" the host asked. Dr. Lopez leaned forward. "From what we've learned so far, they're a fascinating species. Physically weak, yes, but with incredible mental abilities. Their technology, especially in the fields of energy and medicine, is far beyond ours." "But are they dangerous?" the host pressed. Dr. Lopez shook her head. "All evidence suggests they're peaceful. In fact, their biggest problem seems to be their inability to defend themselves." As days passed, more Zephyrians were brought to Earth for medical treatment and rest. Temporary shelters were set up in several countries, and humans volunteered in droves to help. In one such shelter in Brazil, a young human boy named Pedro approached a Zephyrian child who was sitting alone. "Hi," Pedro said shyly. "I'm Pedro. What's your name?" The Zephyrian child looked up, surprised. "I'm Zora," she replied softly. Pedro sat down next to her. "Want to play a game?" he asked, holding up a colorful ball. Zora nodded, her face brightening. Soon, the shelter was filled with the sound of children laughing, human and Zephyrian alike. Not everyone on Earth welcomed the aliens with open arms, though. In many cities, protests broke out. People carried signs reading "Earth for Humans" and "Send them back." In a government office in Washington, D.C., Sarah Chen found herself defending the Zephyrians to a room full of stern-faced politicians. "They have nowhere else to go," she argued passionately. "And think of what we could learn from them." One senator leaned forward. "Captain Chen, I understand your point, but we have to consider Earth's safety first. How do we know they're telling the truth about their situation?" Before Sarah could answer, the door opened. Jackson walked in, his slender form seeming to glow under the harsh office lights. "Honorable leaders of Earth," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I understand your fears, but we come to you not as conquerors or burdens, but as friends. We offer our knowledge, our art, our very selves in exchange for a place to call home." The room fell silent. The senator who had spoken looked at Jackson with new eyes. As Jackson continued to speak, sharing stories of his people's struggles and hopes, the mood in the room began to shift. Even the most skeptical politicians found themselves moved by his words. Outside the government buildings, humans and Zephyrians worked together in the shelters, learning from each other, forming friendships. It wasn't always easy. Cultural misunderstandings were common, and fear sometimes got in the way. But slowly, steadily, two very different species were learning to coexist. As the sun set on another day on Earth, Jackson stood by a window, looking out at the bustling city. For the first time in a long while, he felt hope for his people's future. The journey ahead would be challenging, but they were no longer alone. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrians arrived on Earth. In that time, both species had learned much from each other. Today, a special event was taking place at a newly built research center in Tokyo. Jackson stood before a group of eager human scientists, his slender fingers moving gracefully over a strange device. The humans watched in awe as a small ball of energy formed in the air, glowing with a soft blue light. "This is how we powered our cities on Zephyr," Jackson explained. "It's clean energy, drawn from the very fabric of space itself." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a leading Earth physicist, could barely contain her excitement. This could solve our energy crisis," she exclaimed. Meanwhile, in a gym across the city, a very different kind of exchange was taking place. Sarah Chen, no longer in her captain's uniform, was teaching a group of Zephyrians basic self-defense moves. "Remember," she said, demonstrating the simple block, "it's not about strength. It's about using your opponent's energy against them." The Zephyrians, their bodies so unused to physical exertion, struggled at first, but they were determined to learn. One of them, a young female named Lyra, managed to successfully block Sarah's mock attack. "I did it," Lyra exclaimed, her eyes wide with surprise. Sarah grinned. "See, you're stronger than you think." As humans and Zephyrians worked and learned together, amazing things began to happen. Zephyrian medical knowledge, combined with human innovation, led to breakthroughs in treating diseases once thought incurable. Human music and art, so different from what the Zephyrians knew, inspired new forms of creative expression that blended both cultures. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. In some areas, tension between humans and Zephyrians remained high. In a small town in the American Midwest, a group of angry humans had gathered outside a Zephyrian shelter. "Go back to space," one man shouted, waving a sign. Inside the shelter, a Zephyrian named Zelos watched the protest with sad eyes. He turned to his human friend, Mark. "Perhaps we should leave," Zelos said softly. "We don't want to cause trouble." Mark shook his head firmly. "No way. This is your home now, too. They'll come around eventually." As if to prove Mark's point, a group of counter-protesters arrived, carrying signs that read "Welcome, Zephyrians," and "Diversity makes us stronger." The two groups faced off, but no violence broke out. It was a small step, but an important one. In schools around the world, Zephyrian children were being integrated into classes with human kids. At first, there had been some teasing and misunderstandings. But children, as they often do, adapted quickly. In one classroom in Sydney, Australia, a human girl named Emma raised her hand. "Miss Thompson," she said, "can Zira be on my team for the science project? She has the best ideas." The Zephyrian girl, Zira, beamed with pride. As the days went by, more and more stories like these emerged. Humans and Zephyrians working together, learning from each other, becoming friends and even family. One evening, Jackson stood on the roof of the research center, looking up at the stars. Sarah joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, handing him a cup. Jackson smiled. "I was just thinking about how far we've come. When we first arrived, I was so afraid. I thought we'd be rejected again." Sarah nodded. "It hasn't been easy, but I think we're making real progress." "Your people have shown us such kindness," Jackson said. "You've given us more than just a home. You've given us hope." As they stood there, a shooting star streaked across the sky. In that moment, both Jackson and Sarah made the same silent wish for continued peace and understanding between their peoples. Down below, in cities and towns across the globe, humans and Zephyrians were writing a new chapter in the history of both their species. It was a story of friendship, of overcoming differences, and of finding strength in diversity. The journey was far from over, but together, they were building a brighter future for all. 1 year after the Zephyrians' arrival, Earth received an unexpected message. It came from the Galactic Council, the very group that had exiled the Zephyrians. The message was clear: remove the Zephyrians, or face dire consequences. In the United Nations headquarters in New York, world leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. The room buzzed with nervous energy as they discussed the threat. "We can't just abandon the Zephyrians," argued the president of Brazil. "They're part of our communities now." "But can we risk war with advanced alien races?" countered the British Prime Minister, his face pale with worry. As the debate raged on, Jackson and Sarah waited anxiously outside. They had been called to provide insight, but now they felt helpless. "I never meant to bring trouble to your world," Jackson said softly, his luminous skin dimmed with sadness. Sarah placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "This isn't your fault. We'll figure something out." Inside the meeting room, a young diplomat from Kenya stood up. "Have we forgotten our own history?" she asked, her voice strong. "Earth has always been a refuge for the persecuted. If we turn our backs on the Zephyrians now, we turn our backs on our own humanity." Her words seemed to shift the mood in the room. One by one, leaders began to nod in agreement. Meanwhile, across the globe, news of the Galactic Council's threat spread rapidly. In cities and towns, humans and Zephyrians gathered together, holding candlelight vigils and peaceful protests. In Chicago, a human named Mike stood hand in hand with his Zephyrian neighbor Zara. They held up a sign that read, "Earth stands united. We won't let them take you," Mike said firmly. Zara's eyes shimmered with tears. "Thank you, my friend." Back in New York, the UN meeting reached its conclusion. The Secretary General stepped out to address the waiting crowd. "Earth has made its decision," he announced, his voice echoing through the speakers. "We will not abandon the Zephyrians. They are under our protection now." A cheer went up from the crowd. Jackson turned to Sarah, his eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. "You would risk so much for us?" he asked. Sarah smiled. "That's what friends do." But even as celebrations broke out around the world, preparations for potential conflict began. Earth's military leaders met with Zephyrian scientists, combining their knowledge to bolster the planet's defenses. In a secret facility beneath the Mojave Desert, Dr. Yuki Tanaka worked tirelessly with a team of human and Zephyrian engineers. They were adapting Zephyrian energy technology to create a planetary shield. "If we can get this working," Yuki explained to a group of officials, "we might be able to defend against even the most advanced weapons." As tensions rose, an unexpected ally emerged. Other alien races, hearing of Earth's stand, began to voice their support. Many had suffered under the Galactic Council's harsh rules and saw this as a chance for change. One day, a sleek spaceship landed outside the UN building. From it emerged Ambassador Xol, a representative of the Andromedan Alliance, a group of planets from a neighboring galaxy. "We stand with Earth and the Zephyrians," Xol declared to the astonished human leaders. "It's time the galaxy learned that true strength lies in compassion, not conquest." With each passing day, more alien races pledged their support. Earth, once considered a backward planet on the fringes of the galaxy, was suddenly at the center of a growing coalition. In homes around the world, humans and Zephyrians watched the news together, holding their breath as galactic politics unfolded. Jackson, now an unofficial ambassador for his people, found himself addressing the UN General Assembly. "A year ago, we came to you as refugees," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Today, we stand beside you as allies and friends. Whatever challenges lie ahead, we will face them together." As Jackson spoke, Sarah watched from the sidelines, feeling a mix of pride and apprehension. Earth had taken a stand, and now the galaxy was watching. The next move belonged to the Galactic Council, and everyone knew that their response would shape the future of not just Earth and the Zephyrians, but the entire galaxy. The stage was set for a confrontation that would echo across the stars. The day Earth had been dreading finally arrived. A massive fleet of Galactic Council ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. Their message was simple: surrender the Zephyrians or face destruction. In the newly established Global Defense Center in Geneva, humans and Zephyrians worked side by side, preparing for the coming storm. Screens lit up with data as they tracked the approaching fleet. Sarah Chen, now Admiral of Earth's Combined Space Forces, stood at the command center. Beside her was Jackson, his usually calm face tense with worry. "All planetary shields are at full power," reported a young lieutenant. Sarah nodded. "And our allies?" "The Andromedan fleet is in position," another officer confirmed. "Other allied ships are moving to support positions." Jackson turned to Sarah. "I never wanted this for your world," he said softly. Sarah's eyes were determined. "This isn't just about the Zephyrians anymore. It's about standing up for what's right." As the Galactic Council fleet drew closer, A tense silence fell over Earth. In cities around the world, humans and Zephyrians huddled together, watching the skies. In a small town in Japan, a human child named Hiro held hands with his Zephyrian friend Lyra. "Don't worry," Hiro said bravely. "Our new shield will protect us." Lyra smiled, her skin glowing softly in the dim light. "And we'll protect you too," she promised. Back in Geneva, the command center erupted into action as the first wave of Galactic Council ships entered Earth's orbit. "They're charging weapons," shouted an officer. Sarah's voice was steady as she gave the order. "Activate the shield." Outside, the sky seemed to ripple as an invisible barrier sprang to life around the planet. The Galactic Council's first volley of energy weapons splashed harmlessly against it. A cheer went up in the command center, but Sarah knew this was just the beginning. For hours, the battle raged in space. Earth's allies clashed with the Galactic Council fleet, their ships dancing in deadly patterns against the backdrop of stars. On the ground, Zephyrians revealed another surprise. Though physically weak, their mental powers were strong. All across the globe, Zephyrians joined hands, focusing their minds to strengthen Earth's defenses. In New York's Central Park, hundreds of glowing Zephyrians sat in circles, their combined mental energy creating a shimmering dome over the city. Similar scenes played out in cities worldwide. As the battle wore on, something unexpected began to happen. Ships from other alien races, not part of the original alliance, began to arrive. They joined Earth's side, turning the tide of the fight. In the command center, Jackson's eyes widened as he recognized some of the new arrivals. "Those are ships from races that once shunned us," he said in awe. "They're here to help." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Looks like your people aren't the only ones who were tired of the Galactic Council's bullying." As more ships joined Earth's defense, the Galactic Council fleet found itself outnumbered. Their attacks became desperate, erratic. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Council's flagship sent out a signal. They were requesting to open communications. The command center fell silent as the main screen flickered to life, revealing the face of the Galactic Council's leader. His expression was a mix of anger and grudging respect. "It seems we underestimated you, Earthlings," he said. "And you, Zephyrians. Perhaps we were hasty in our judgment." Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm. "We're willing to talk, but only if you recognize the rights of the Zephyrians and all other races you've wronged." The council leader was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "We are open to negotiations." As the news spread across Earth and to the ships in space, celebrations broke out. Humans and Zephyrians embraced, tears of joy and relief flowing freely. In the command center, Sarah turned to Jackson. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We have a chance to reshape the galaxy for the better." Jackson nodded, his eyes shining with hope. "Together, there's nothing we can't achieve." As the sun rose on a new day, Earth and its allies prepared for the peace talks that would shape the future of the galaxy. The weak Zephyrians and their human protectors had become a force that could no longer be ignored. 5 years had passed since the Great Battle. The galaxy was a very different place now. Earth, once considered a backwater planet, had become a center of interstellar diplomacy and cultural exchange. In the newly built Galactic Peace Center in Geneva, representatives from hundreds of alien races gathered for the annual Interstellar Cooperation Summit. The massive hall buzzed with a mix of languages and telepathic communications. At the center of it all stood Jackson and Sarah, now respected leaders in this new galactic order. They watched with pride as humans and aliens of all kinds mingled freely. "Remember when we first met?" Sarah asked, a smile playing on her lips. "Who would have thought we'd end up here?" Jackson's skin glowed warmly. "It's more than I ever dared to dream," he replied. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Zara, the young Zephyrian who had once been a scared refugee. Now she was Earth's ambassador to the reformed Galactic Council. "The Council is ready to hear the proposal," Zara announced, her voice filled with excitement. Sarah nodded. Let's go change the galaxy again. In the council chambers, leaders from across the stars listened as Jackson presented their plan. It was ambitious, a program to identify and protect vulnerable species throughout the galaxy, ensuring that no race would ever face the persecution the Zephyrians once did. We call it the Galactic Sanctuary Initiative, Jackson explained. Together, we can create a galaxy where strength is measured not by military might, but by the compassion we show to others. As Jackson spoke, screens around the room displayed images of the initiative in action. On one planet, humans and Zephyrians worked together to help a newly discovered species recover from a natural disaster. On another, a mixed team of aliens used advanced technology to restore a dying ecosystem. The council members nodded approvingly. The leader, the same one who had once threatened Earth, now spoke in support of the plan. Earth and the Zephyrians have taught us a valuable lesson, he said. True power comes from unity and mutual respect. As news of the initiative's approval spread, celebrations broke out across Earth and on planets throughout the galaxy. In New York's Times Square, humans and aliens danced together under the bright lights. In the markets of Alpha Centauri, traders from 100 worlds raised their voices in cheer. Back on Earth, in a small classroom in Nairobi, a human teacher named Amara smiled at her diverse group of students. Humans sat next to young Zephyrians, while holographic projections allowed children from distant planets to join the class. Today, we're going to learn about the Great Change, Amara began. Can anyone tell me how it started? A young Zephyrian raised his hand. It started when humans welcomed us, even though everyone else had rejected us. Amara nodded. That's right, Stelos. And can anyone tell me why that was important? This time, a human girl spoke up, because it showed that being kind is more powerful than being strong. Excellent, Fatima, Amara said. And that idea changed everything, didn't it? As the lesson continued, Amara couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. The galaxy, once divided by fear and mistrust, was now united in a shared vision of peace and cooperation. Meanwhile, on a distant planet at the edge of the galaxy, a small ship landed. From it emerged a team of humans and Zephyrians, part of the new Galactic Sanctuary Initiative. They had detected signs of intelligent life on this world and had come to make first contact. As they approached a group of nervous-looking aliens, the team leader, a Zephyrian named Lyra, stepped forward. She remembered her own people's history and the kindness shown by humans. Now, it was her turn to extend that same hand of friendship. Greetings, Lyra said, her voice warm and welcoming. We come in peace, as friends and protectors. You are not alone in this vast galaxy. Together, we can achieve great things. As the sun set on this new world, casting a warm glow over humans, Zephyrians, and the newly discovered aliens, the promise of a brighter future seemed to shine in every star. The story of the weak aliens who found safety with humans had become a legend, a beacon of hope that would inspire generations across the cosmos. In the end, it wasn't physical strength or advanced technology that had changed the galaxy. It was compassion, understanding, and the simple act of reaching out to help those in need. And in that strength, the strength of unity and kindness, the galaxy had found its greatest power of all.